You're very welcome to the Irish Political Roundup. You're very welcome to the Irish Political Roundup's Agri Food segment with me, Roisin the Cleric.
And me, Paul Brophy. And today, Roisin, we're joined again by Patrick Murphy, who's the CEO of the Ireland South and Southwest Fish Producers Organisation.
Patrick, you're just back from Brussels and you have further updates for us.
I have, and we made a presentation. I don't know, can you see this now,
Yeah?
Roshi?
Seafood Island Alliance.
Yeah, so that's all of us in the processing sector, including the major, bigger of the POs. We did ask other POs to join us in this group, but they didn't want to. So I'd leave it at that. I don't agree with why they didn't want to, but they didn't want to. It would have been nice if we had unity right across the board, but each to their own. So anyway, we got a meeting with Commissioner Caddis. It was organised, in fairness, by Maria Walsh and two of her senators, Noel O'Donovan in the Cork Southwest and Manus Boyle in Donegal. So yeah, we met the commissioner, and myself and E. O'Donnell had the pleasure of meeting him twice in one day. The first time we met him was at the XCOM of the Pelagic Advisory Council. So we were in Brussels for that. We were there for 3 days of meetings, doing workshops on potential ways of changing scientific advice to meet the immediate response to what's happening in the grounds. Whereas ICE's advice works over 5 years, it's worked on the same transects, so they want continuity, even though the fish mightn't be in the same place every year. They believe that that's the best way of doing the science. We believe that's flawed science, and that's leading to differences of opinions between us and our scientists. When they get it wrong, we really suffer. When we get it wrong, we still suffer, but not to the same extent. We presented, and I'll explain this now, and hopefully people will not be too flabbergasted by this. Europe shares its fishing species, one particularly mackerel, with six other coastal states. So you've got Europe and all our countries. Then you have the UK, you have Norway, Iceland, Faroes, Greenland, and Russia. And there hasn't been a comprehensive sharing arrangement or agreement between those countries for a numerous number of years now. And some of those countries have decided to use their own reasoning to increase their share unilaterally outside of what the scientific advice would be to each country. So by them taking greater shares, we not changing our share, then obviously the 100% is exceeded in some years by a lot. And this has led the scientists to reducing the catch advice for this species for everybody from where it once was at its height, 790,000 tons for all of us to catch, down to this year, 174,000. So that's a massive, massive reduction.
Can I ask you a question before we go any further for our viewers? Who is paying for this scientific advice and where is this scientific advice coming from?
So you have a collection of all scientists that look at this from around the world, and who pays for it? They're called the clients. Europe would be one, and meant to be all the other coastal states would be also part of that request and paying them for that advice. I'm not quite sure if Russia is contributing anymore, but they do contribute advice, or not advice, but information when they feel like it as well too. So it is complex, but here's where it gets even worse. So after the December Council, where all the decisions are made for Europe and which way we're going to do our fishing, in other words, what amounts we have to take, the top line advice is 174,000 tons. Four countries, four coastal states, Norway, the UK, Iceland, and the Faroes came together and they decided to take the second line advice. It was only at the meeting, I believe, with our commissioner that they actually understood what we're talking about, because we in the South and West looked at the scientific advice, and I'll explain it very quickly. At 174,000 tons, the stock is estimated to recover by 11.4% in 2027. Okay? If you follow the second line advice, of course, it's not going to be as high, but it still recovers, and it recovers at 8.5%. So the difference between those two figures is 2.9%. Okay? Everybody with me? So the problem is that because the other countries are going to go to the second line advice and we stay at the top line advice, it means the recovery will only be around 18,000 tons instead of the 125 if everybody stuck to the same path, which means that Europe, if it follows the top line advice, would help to recover the stock in their sacrifice by 0.32%. I want to explain that. So the stock only recovers if Europe follows the advice of the top line on its own with Greenland and the others take the second line advice. The difference in the recovery is 0.32%. But the cost, as we've explained to the Commissioner for European fishermen, is 108 million euros.
I have a question. Why is there a loss of stock within our Irish sea waters?
Others keep taking our fish. Josephine, I don't know where that came from. Roisin. Others keep taking our fish. We keep saying this. The common fishery policy, as I've just outlined in a radio interview that just before I've come on with your good selves, is designed on a map that no longer exists. That's the easiest way to describe it. When we joined the EU, we had control out to 12 miles of our waters. It subsequently changed in the next number of years, and we went from 12 to 200 miles. That became our territory. We got away more. So then we had to decide who we left in and how we left them in. And that was the creation of the common fishery policy. And the United Kingdom and Ireland allowed all the other fleets to keep coming in, catching fish around those areas. But we built in a safety mechanism called the Hague Preferences, which meant when the stocks were fished down, the coastal communities whose waters in which these fish got fished down, those coastal communities, our waters, right? We'd be protected, our fleet would be protected to a greater extent than everybody else.
Yeah.
This year, those other countries, because they have a bigger population, because there's more of them than there, told the Irish people, we're not allowing that to happen anymore. We're revoking the Hagues. You're not getting them. So we're going to come in and take that fish, whether you like it or not. That's the facts. So we were more
What
or less
countries are
invaded.
yeah.
Yeah, we were invaded again this year and will be continuously invaded by these countries because now they're doing something that we don't feel is right against our wishes. That's invasion.
And that's against the wishes of the Irish people.
Well, the Irish people don't know the complexities of this because, unfortunately, very few media outlets like yourself want to debate and talk about this to explain it simply to the Irish people. But that's how it is. That's the way it is, and we have the evidence to prove it. But we believe that's contrary to European law. We believe that's contrary to the European ideology of fairness and level playing pitch and everything else. We believe that Europe giving billions and billions of euros to another country to defend itself against a foreign power that's coming in, invading their country and taking their resources and territory is hypocrisy when they're doing the exact same thing to a member of the United Union and taking away our fish. Where's the difference? Just because it's fish or land or other resources, they're doing it to us. And I feel that's total hypocrisy, and I believe it's illegal. Now, that's my view, and who am I? I'm just an annoying, paid for representative I'm being reminded of by even fellow fishermen. And it's tough to take, to be honest with you, because we get a lot of abuse now that we're flying it and that the industry is on its knees and we're doing nothing about it. I've been at this for 10 years. I've predicted this. I've begged people to listen to me. I told what was going to happen. We organised protests up the rivers. We've published papers. We've said this is happening. We've consistently come out. I even ran as a candidate for the European Union to highlight what I'm saying to you now.
What countries are overfishing in our Irish waters?
You see, technically, they're not overfishing because what the scientists do is they keep lowering the bar, right? Now the problem is here's their share, right? Here's ours. So when everybody gets shoved down, Eventually, we're gone. Does
My
that
next
explain it?
question is, what are the Irish government and politicians doing about this? Not what are they, I'm not asking what they are saying, I'm asking what are they actually doing?
We are going to travel. I will get up tomorrow morning at 4 o'clock. I will get showered, shaved, and cleaned and put on a nice suit. I'll pick up a colleague, John Nolan, from the Avon Falls in Ballylickey. We'll do a 5 hour drive to Holt to listen to what the minister is going to do for us to answer your question. I'll know that after that. So, what I've been told is that there's going to be a task force created. We are members on the task force. There's members from other areas of the industry going to be on the task force. Um, what do we want? We want fish. That's basically what we want. Will we get it? No. Will we get another scheme that will kick the can down the road? My view, yes. Will our fishermen be again pushed off the water? Yes. Will we be given money to do this? Yes. Will
But
this
what
be
good
good for
is
Ireland?
money? What good
Mm.
is money if our fishermen can't fish in our own waters, in our own Irish sea waters? What good is money when the skills and the talents and expertise of fishermen is being diminished, and then our fishing and coastal communities and coastal economies?
To explain that, Roisin, it's very simple. It's like an army and it's like a soldier. They're willing to sacrifice the soldier for the army, and that's the problem. So the
For
individual,
the European army, then, not
yeah,
the Irish
yeah,
soldiers. For
yeah.
the European, this is for the European, because also, and we've talked about this lots of times, Patrick. I know nothing about fishing. Neither does Paul, but we know common sense. And when we met you in Castlecoma in 2023, to go to the supermarket and buy fish, it is a luxury. So, and what I've learned from you is the fish that we are buying is Irish fish caught in our Irish seawater. However, it is foreign fishing trawlers that are catching the fish, bringing it into Irish ports, and then haulage companies are transporting the Irish fish across Europe and to European countries. And we are buying the fish back from the European countries. Am I correct?
But that goes for most foodstuffs in Ireland now at the moment. Like that goes for oil and gas. This is nothing new. Like this is like
Yeah,
electricity.
but just for a fish, I'm concentrating
No,
on
but
that.
yeah, but you're right. But like there seems to be a policy driven for this, and it's the money gets washed, and the money it creates more, and but not for the people that are involved in it. Like this is the crux of the matter. And then what you're saying, Roisin, is the ultimate end of
Yeah.
this, right? And the ultimate end is there just won't be Irish fishermen. The system will continue. There will always be fish being brought into the country, like you
But
said.
we won't be able to
Will be
afford to buy
replaced.
it
What people
because,
are, yeah, what I'll just stop you here, right? What I'm saying to you is this: we'll be replaced. The people that produced the sugar cane and the sugar around were replaced. The people that were producing peat briquettes and board namona were replaced. We're being replaced.
and
That's what's happening.
the farmers were the Mercosur.
Absolutely. And you see, the public have to understand what the impact will be on them. And that's what you said. That's why the fish is so dear, is because it has to be.
Yeah.
Because there's too many links. Instead of the fisherman bringing the fish to the supermarket and selling it, or the fish bringing it to the processor and straight away selling it, there's other links. And every time there's a new link in the chain, they have to be profitable and make money, which drives up the cost. But it creates more, and if they get people foolish enough to keep buying the product, then you'll have this system. What I'm saying is this, first of all, is that the Irish fishermen and the fishing communities are at risk because Europe has decided that their fishermen have greater rights in Irish waters than we have. That's what it boils down to. So when I'm talking to our European colleagues outside, I want them to raise that in the Parliament. I want them to talk about the hypocrisy that's going on in Europe and call it out. That's all they have to do. And then see where it goes. That's their job. They haven't got the numbers to change the laws outside there, but they can embarrass them. They can use them in their political parties. Now, I'm going to come back to your point about what's happening above. You see, our fishermen now have bought their boats. They are families that depend on it, and they've been given really very little choice. The gun is to their head. Either they take the money or they go out of business another way. And I suffer that myself. That's unfortunately the way. So even though the government are giving money to these fishermen, the fishermen have no choice. They have to take the money or they're gone. They're going to lose their businesses anyway. What the Irish people don't understand is this means that they will lose their fishing industry, that you'll eventually get rid of your fishermen. Now, look, I got a phone call from RTE yesterday morning about tangle nets and about this report that had come out, and it was in either the Irish Independent or the Irish Times. And this girl now that I was talking to was lovely. She was very open and everything else, but she didn't read the report. She picked it from the newspaper. And then when I gave her my knowledge and expanded on it, and I asked her to send me the report she had and the information, she said, I don't have it. And I said, well, look, when you get it, send it on to me, and then we can look at it. This is what's happening, lads. This is this. And I know I come on these podcasts with yourself and I'm as frustrated. And I'm laughing at it because, to be honest with you, you wouldn't see it in a comedy show. But
You wouldn't. It's like
in
comical alley, isn't it?
but the problem is, Roisin, is that the likes of yourselves, Paul, and yourself are not given the opportunity to get to the people. You should be hired by RTE because
I
you're
know.
journalists, genuinely, like,
We were
because you
told
cover the
that on the
topic.
coun- we were told that in the county council's caucus on Friday
I,
night.
I, they're on about, equality in the sexes, right? There should be X amount of females and X amount of males, whatever, whoever believes in that. I think we should be moving that to a next level. We should have community reporters, a definite amount in our public broadcasters that they should be covered, not just their own people, so that you can bring these stories, even if you get an hour a week or 2 hours a week on prime time now, not this, not at 6 o'clock in the morning. Maybe
Mm.
that's something we should be lobbying the politicians to get out to show that, then there's no corruption. Then there's no biasness. Then there's no innuendos or you're paying for this or you're paid for broadcast. You're not a public broadcaster. Prove it. Bring the likes of yourselves on, give you an hour a week, or not just yourselves, anybody rotate it, and have these interviews on where people can interact or a show because they're not talking to me. Like, no, I'm hoping to meet RTE tomorrow. I hope I won't be too tired, but I'm hoping to talk to them because there's slow stories. So when this lady was saying about the report that there's endangered species being caught, I said, okay, how many seals? Eight. All right. So how long is this over? 4 years. Right. That's two a year. How many fishermen? 40. Right. So so it's not endemic. It's not 40 fishermen killing seals. There has been a bycatch in a year, two of the 40. How many times did they shoot their nets? So it's not just 40 now. So say they shoot their nets 100 times. Now it's 4,000. So in 4,000 occasions of shooting their fishing net, unfortunately, two seals have been killed in 4,000 fishing expeditions. How many foxes are killed at the side of the road? How many
We have to
deers are
kill
being
the
killed at the side of
development.
the road?
Yeah.
Should we stop driving? There are consequences for everything. I said the same about plowing the field, but it's until she got to hear my side of it. And here's the worst bit. I said, where were these seals and where were they being caught? She said, I don't know. Well, you see, through the report, we learned that if you fish in a certain area, the risk of catching these protected animals is higher. So what do, lads? Don't go into those areas. There's a greater risk. Fish away from those areas. Continue to fish. Use your gear. But the highly protected areas, like we're saying about marine protected areas, there's one.
Mm.
If you go in there, there's a likelihood in 1 in 4,000 that you could catch one of these animals. That's too high a risk. No,
And fishermen,
this is like
fish,
playing the lotto. One in
fishermen,
4,000.
Patrick, are like our farmers. You are the guard. Farmers are the guardians of our land. Fishermen are the guardians of our coastal waters and our sea waters. Fishermen are not going to fish or harm any endangered animals. And this is what needs to get out there. Fishermen are our coastal guardians.
Well, what they bring in and the food they provide, like, there
Mm.
you can't make an omelet without, breaking eggs. Like if you use the analogy that they're using, right, that you're doing harm, then you shouldn't eat eggs. You should just let them grow to chickens. You should never milk a cow. You should just rear calves. Do you know? Never have cheese or butter or anything else. Like Now, there are people that say we should be doing that. They're called vegans, right? But I'm not a vegan. I'm not even a vegetarian. I am the opposite. I like my food and my meat, and there are some things I don't eat, but like I do that because I to survive, you know. Could I survive in other stuff? Probably. Do I want to? No. But like that's my own personal choice. Isn't it desperate that I have my own personal choice? Like to
Patrick,
do
going back
this.
to the task force, is this task force another box ticking, delaying exercise, or will it be drawn out as
I
a diversion or distraction from actually action?
So first of all, I must apologize for my interruptions and trying to butt in. My brain works in a way that it doesn't give time for social stuff. I have definitely, I haven't been diagnosed, but I'm convinced I have ADHD from a young age, all the way back to school. So my apologies for jumping in. But yes and no. So you can answer your question in two ways. One, do the fishermen need it? Yes, they have to get it. Their fish has been taken away from them through no fault of their own. Their waters have been cleaned out. The fish they were to catch have been taken by other countries. They have now been decimated. The little bit of a safety net they had on the Hague preference is gone. So it really means that these people will be put into a scenario where they're going to be illegal in their own waters, whereas the other boats won't be illegal. So one way or the other, the deck is stacked against us. So is this task force necessary? Absolutely. Will it yield what we're hoping it to yield? I can't answer that, Roisin. Going on previous experiences, I'm very skeptical.
Mm,
And I've said this above in the Oireachtas,
yeah,
in front of the TDs.
mm,
We're being wiped out
yeah.
when a scheme like this, we're asked to join in and give our expertise, which we do, but then on its implementation, we're told to stand back and it changes. And what we first envisaged isn't what is the outcome. And then we're frustrated and it doesn't work. And then it doesn't meet the objectives that we set out for it. I'm hoping this will be different. Um, but then again, they say the definition of madness is doing the same thing over and over again and
Yeah.
expecting a different result. Unfortunately, we're back at that stage. I don't think there's an appetite for decommissioning. I think we should be restructuring our fleet and changing the way that we fish, reducing it and giving timeouts to people. You know, you just don't keep doing it. Like, you know my analogy of a football field. You give the pitch time to recover. You only put one team on it at a time. You don't put them all on together, you know?
Patrick, before I hand over to my colleague Paul, who's waiting in great anticipation to ask some questions, you said the task force. I'm very skeptical of task force because every task force or every uh, thing that any organizations have went and said, oh, task force. I've always seen, and everybody says it's a box ticking. As I mentioned earlier, it's a distraction and a delay tactics. You said that you were optimistic and you had hope in the task force. How optimistic out of 1 to 10 would you be in this task force delivering what the fishermen need and what the Irish public and consumers need?
Two separate questions. For the fishermen, it's survival. For the public, it should be providing more fish and developing our industry. It won't do that. That's the truth. The only way
Out
that
of 1 to 10, what is your level of optimism for the fishermen?
for the fishermen, my optimism is maybe six. My optimism for what you're talking about on the other side, zero. The task force won't address those issues. We've had two task force already. We went to Brussels. We didn't take them on. We didn't challenge them legally. The only way that we would change the common fishery policy if we had a team of barristers, experts on international and European law, and you really want the country to go ahead, you'd have to put the same effort, probably double it actually, that we put into giving back the 15 or 18 billion or how many billion it was to Apple. If we had the same drive in the law to do that, I'd raise it from zero to maybe four or five. But at the moment it's zero.
So,
Zero for the country making a benefit. This is about looking after the most vulnerable at the moment, and that is the men and women who've put their lives, their parents' lives, their
yeah,
whole, every bit of their existence into their industry. they would be, in my view, considered servants of the people, right? Or what's the word for doctors, nurses,
Okay.
and for the nuns, a vocation.
It is a vocation. And every time fishermen go out to sea, you don't know if they're coming back again.
True.
Oh yeah, unfortunately, they don't like to think of that. But yeah, and look, we've put safety measures, life buoys, and everything into the life rafts, and we do drills, and there's a lot. But everything can go wrong outside there, like from
What you don't
storm,
know,
hails, engine failure, water leaks. Getting foul on the bottom with your gear. Even submarines could get stuck in you. Has happened, So like, it is a dangerous environment to get washed overboard. Like we've had fellas that have had accidents. A lever hitting a boat, he gets caught in a net, it goes up, he falls down, breaks his neck, gets squeezed. There are accidents. It is not the safest place on the planet to be, but that's the nature of the beast. That is fishing, and fishermen that go on board boats know the risk. Do they get rewarded for that risk? Not at all. Not
and
not anymore.
they are going out risking their lives on a vocation for our food resources, food supply, and safe food, because it is safe food when we catch our own Irish fish in our own Irish water, and it is brought into our own Irish owned local food processing plants, food manufacturing plants, food packaging plants. I know nothing about fishing, but I'm just
Yeah,
catching it.
you're right. You're right. But
That
I'm
is clean, healthy food with no additives, no nothing. The fishermen are there like the farmers. They are giving us healthy, clean food for our health. And that is fishermen are coastal heroes in giving us that food that is good for our health. And they're not getting rewarded for it.
Machine, I have to commend your passion. I wish more of the Irish people had it. In all fairness, like my job would be so much easier. I'm smiling. I'm saying I've one converted. I think Paul is number two, but like, if only we could get the message out to our own people right across. And it doesn't have to be Irish, just people living in the country to understand this is hurting you as well. Like this, you're surrounded by water. Can you imagine not being told you can't fish? Like if you walk down to the pier and somebody said, "Do you have a rod?" Sorry, you can't catch fish. But somebody else from another country drives up with a foreign reg and jumps out of the car, and he's held to the pier wall and told fish away. That's what's happening. Like anyway, I'd better let Paul in because he'll kill us if
I know you're
we don't get on
certainly
board.
not. But Patrick, I know we said this on previous programs, and we've spoken a lot about the common fisheries common fisheries policy, and that, as you said earlier on, it was designed as a map that no longer exists. Ireland has the presidency of the EU from July. Is there any possibility that you can see that Ireland, its MEPs, can use that platform to highlight the big problems that are there with the common fisheries policy and the wipeout that is happening of our Irish fishing industry?
Well, that's what I'm wearing, hoping where the report will come into from the task force that our MEPs can carry that back to Europe and put it on the table and say, here we go. Like we have a sympathetic ear from the commissioner, believe it or believe it not. He's from the Cypriots, like he's from Cyprus. So he knows what it's like for people to come in and take over half your territory or whatever else. So he is a sympathetic ear. He keeps telling us that it's down to the Council of Ministers. So you have a scenario where most of Europe is against you, unfortunately, for their own interests. And no, I'm not stupid. I understand why. But for me, the European Union, right, itself and the principles of it are being undermined here. We still
Mm.
have, which is mirroring colonialism, if I can pronounce it correctly. We are being colonized, right? And this is where I'd be hoping where the Irish state can bring the evidence to Europe and say, look, if you're going to subscribe to protecting countries being invaded and fund them, stop invading your own countries, regardless of whether it's land or sea or air. We cannot be that allow when it's so detrimental, we can show it that your activities in our country is wiping out our heritage, our traditions, our way of food security. providing an income and economy to our own people from our own resource. That's what I'm hoping the presidency will bring, and I hope our MEPs will bring that platform. But I'm going to say I'm really disappointed with the Dublin, Leinster TD MEPs. Only one, the Sinn Féin candidate, Miss Boland, showed up to one meeting to meet us. I meet the others in the airport and everything else, and they just don't want to know. They, really and truly. And this is a national Irish resource. It's for Ireland, like. So even if it's not really important, even though you have Holt and Dundalk and you have Dunleary, and all down the Wicklow, I'm not sure is that quite in their area, but they definitely have people that are in their constituency that do depend on the sea and the maritime, and yet they wouldn't even meet us. It's shocking, like, and
And their constituents eat fish. The restaurants have fish on the menu.
yeah, but like I don't understand why they wouldn't meet. We've put out emails, they've been briefed. I must say, EO Donald, who is our lead on this from the SIA, the Seafood Industry Alliance, who we treat them all the same, ask for meetings. We're out this week now, and we met with, as I said, the commissioner through Maria Walsh, like, and we meet Barry Cohen, we meet Billy Kelleher, Cynthia Ní Murricu, Sean Kelly. Um, I shouldn't leave out anybody now, so be careful.
Deputy Kathleen Funk.
Nina,
Deputy.
Catherine
Deputy.
Function, Brian Cowan, and um, the man at Independent Ireland, Kieran
Clear.
Maloney, who really is helpful to us. They're the main ones that we meet. I don't think I'm leaving out anybody that the others. We've met Luke Ming Flanagan in the past. I know Luke has had an operation or something, and he's out of the picture for a while, but there are others that just won't make the effort to meet us, and you'll understand that they're busy and mightn't coincide with us, but we'd meet them in their offices in Dublin or wherever they're based from. This is so serious to the Irish people. So coming back to your question, Paul, it will take every one of our MEPs united under one word, and we see how they're divided in Mercosur and others, and it really undermines Ireland then in Europe when there isn't one clear message coming from all our MEPs. Now, surely be to God, our MEPs could get united behind one simple fact. Ireland has fish around its waters, and at 15%, it's not enough to sustain our industry. The common fishery policy is broken in that instance. The Hague preferences, I don't think any of them could argue with what we're saying there, that it's wrong in any shape or manner, right? Or excuse it away. So here's common ground that every one of them, despite their political ideology, could come behind one thing. This is Ireland's resource. This is for the Irish people. We need to protect it. We need to protect our coastal communities all around the country. So, on that instance, I'm praying that when we have the presidency, they will actually, all of them, come to meet us, the SIA and the others. There's others there. I'm not excluding anybody. I would like to see the NIFA, Inshore NIFA, the Island IMRO, all of us go together, have one meeting before the presidency, outline the stall, and say, listen, will you get behind this and would you bring this message forward and work with us? Work with us. Does that answer your question? Long-winded.
Yeah,
I have
and
a question now out of that question. Paul, you brought up the European presidency.
mhm.
We've heard from many people. It's a box ticking exercise. It's not, the Irish government is told what to say and do from Europe, right? From European. You said in the previous interviews many times, what we need is the MEPs to go out to Europe with our Taoiseach and our Taoiseach to go out and fight for the Irish fishermen and the Irish fisheries. Do you see that happening?
Paul or me?
You, Paul, Patrick.
I hope it will. They have the presidency, so you're going to have your ministers outside there. This is their window, shop window. This is up to Ireland to put forward what we think as a country is good for Europe. We are the presidents of Europe, so we bring things to the table. For me, if you cannot show that countries, and especially smaller countries like Ireland, have to be protected where they need protection, then you're failing.
At the minute, though, we
Because,
need protected from Europe,
yeah,
and I'm not anti-Europe, but we need protected from Arab, from Europe for our food supply
yeah, but
and the fisheries.
I'm not explaining myself properly, Roisin, and that is a trait. Let me explain what I'm saying. Ireland has the presidency.
Yeah,
As the smaller country within Europe, it is up to them. They're obligated to stand up for all the smaller countries in Europe. And I believe fishing is a way of showing that to the rest of the countries and righting the wrong that has gone on. Regardless that it has gone on, there is time to fix it. Fish will recover, fish will come back. If we're given half a chance, we'll protect our industries and everything else. We can turn the tide, we can turn the table. This is it. But for me, this is an opportunity for our leaders in Ireland to stand up for all the small countries in Europe, regardless whether it's something a different industry in the Cypriots. It could be olives. It could whatever it is for the
good point.
smaller countries that we have seen through the Hague preferences, right? That were denied of us, where four bigger countries with large populations were able to deny a smaller country with Europe their own rights to catch their own fish in their
Yeah,
own waters. Think about it. We didn't
Mm.
ask for fish anywhere else. We just wanted a fair share of the fish in our waters. And
we
the
should be looking for a fair share of our fish in our own waters. We should be having the ultimate catch in our own waters. We shouldn't be looking for a fair share because other countries we should be setting out the quotas, and other countries should be working with our fisheries department, our agriculture and agri-food, and our fishermen. We should not be begging, oh, can we have a little bit of our own fish? I mean, Michael Collins said it right. We are at war. Europe is at war with Ireland with our fisheries. And we have been invaded on on our coastal waters and we are prisoners in our own fishing ports.
You're right. You're right. And Michael Collins, but we need if it would be fine if he was Taoiseach because he would definitely carry that message to Europe. What I am saying is that the message is a fair message. What I'm saying is that during the presidency, it's an example where they could show Europe and the smaller countries of Europe. Here you go. Here's an example. Because the common fishery policy is under review. We have a commissioner in Europe that is sympathetic to us because he comes from a small country.
That's
So
a,
coming
that's a
back,
good,
yeah. So coming back to what Paul, brilliant question, right? How can we best use the presidency?
yeah.
Mm.
As a consequence or as a distraction basically from ourselves is our Taoiseach, who has a large international voice now. He's put himself on the international stage with some of the things they've said and are tarnished. Well, let's see them use that voice for their own. I hope that's not, seen as um, centralist or isolationist. I think it's an example to everybody else is that when you have the opportunity, you say what's right. I think what's right is very simple. If you're saying other countries coming into your territories and taking too much that's detrimental to you, then you should be calling it out. And that's what's
Mm.
happening in the common fishery policy. We're literally going out of business in our own country. We just can't sustain the fleet that we have, and we've sacrificed so much. We've gone from thousands of boats down to less than 200. We're down to 140 boats. The writing's on the wall. If the task force is about quietening us or trying to buy us off, that won't happen. Not while I'm in my position, I can tell you that. This is about building for the future and making sure we can protect what's there and use the report to go to the common fishery policy, to the member states during our presidency and say, this is not able to continue, because if you do, you knowingly will be destroying Ireland's indigenous fishing community and our seafood industry. You will knowingly be taking so much fish from our waters, you will be putting us out of business, knowingly. And all the data and the evidence is there to show that.
And Patrick, there's also when you take the whole fisheries and in Ireland fishing industry. There's about 2,300 jobs supported with the announcement of the cuts back in December. Are you already starting to see kind of biting there as regards, say, amongst your fish producing factories, processing factories, um, that the hits that are hitting there?
I'm going to give you a statistic now, and thanks there again for another brilliant question, Paul. It is outstanding. So this year, at the start of the year, every month we give out certain quotas, right? Fish stocks. And it's in the thousands and thousands of tons, thousands and thousands of tons. We've landed 600 ton in January. Now, you can imagine that. That wouldn't feed Ireland. That's 600 ton. It's nothing like. So that's what we've been reduced to. We've been decimated. Like
Yeah,
that's where you're at. 600 tons. There's nothing like, a couple of fields full of cattle. There you go. That's it for the entire ocean around us. The Atlantic Ocean, the Irish Sea, the Celtic Sea, all the way up to Rockall. And that's all we could harvest out of our own oceans with a fleet of 140. Just break it down to 140
yeah.
boats. It's 4 ton a boat, like. It's
That's
nothing.
that's
It's
awful for a local, say, fishmonger, be it in Castletownbere or Westport, or you know, there'll be fish that he wants to buy off the local fisherman, but he can't because
not
that
there.
fisherman doesn't have the quotas to supply it.
Yeah, yeah. So like they're buying it off as Roisin says, they're buying it off the foreign boats in our fish from their boats. This is a reality, like. But look, I can keep saying this till I'm blue in the face. And as I said, I'm criticized then by, well, what are you doing about it? Well, I'm doing everything I possibly can in my power. I'm going to meetings. I'm working 6, 7 days a week. This is a Sunday, I work birthdays. I don't miss funerals and weddings. I refuse to do that. But my fishermen do. They go out in the weather and we produce food. My family do. Like we produce a couple of 100 ton a year anyway of food that people can eat. So like what I'm doing, bar going back fishing, there isn't much more I can do. And I would love that what we do, the three of us now, could go to a bigger audience because then people might see that they too need to get involved. How do they get involved? Like they do in anything else. Just write an email, write a letter, talk to their local politician when they knock on the door, like. But the politicians, have to go to Europe. We are governed by Europe, like it or not. Governed by Europe is the way we follow their laws. They stand head and
But our
shoulders.
laws, I'm not anti-Europe, but what about
I
our
don't
laws?
know.
But we're actually being so, and that them words of definitely, and I'm not being politically biased here, but we have been invaded, and also our land, our whole food resource, from our farmers to our fishermen. And what about our laws? What about our people? Are we too much the good boys in the class in Europe that we know what? From our military, from our farmers, our fishermen, to all our laws. What about Irish laws? What did Michael Collins in the Civil War all die for? Everybody in the Civil War died for. We've just changed the narrative where we're being dictated to by Europe, and Irish people are just being invaded.
You see, the only way to talk about fishing and things like this, in my view, Roisin, is what you're talking about there. And I'm smiling because there's ideas popping into my head. So we look back in history when the
Yeah.
Vikings used to come and invade, and we built towers and we'd pull up the ladders and we'd be shooting out of small windows and we'd be trying to protect the gold and stuff like that, right? Well, with fishing, we hire our own people to police the waters to allow them to come in and catch the fish.
Mm.
And they don't just come every now and again, they're here every week. So they're constantly robbing our treasure from us on a week to week basis. And then they're selling it back to us. Like if you went to
At a premium.
a car boot sale, right? And you went up to a fella and you said, Jesus, that looks like the stuff that was robbed from me last week. And he says, yeah, what about it? And you buy it back off him and you go back again the next week and he's selling it back to you again and again and again. And you get to use it until he takes it from you. That is the reality of what's happening here. But again, nobody seems to mind that that's happening because it's not them who they're robbing from. They can't see it coming out of their house. They can't see their property. They don't see the fish around Ireland as theirs, which is what's wrong. It is the property of the Irish people.
Yeah.
And as you said, if we had more of it, then the price would come down. We'd have more of it, we'd have more choice, we'd have healthier food to eat. We'd make more money because everybody wants it, because 80% of the fish consumed in Europe comes from outside Europe. So it's not like we don't have a market. It's different to Mercosur. They need it. So if we stop the other fella from catching it, then the people he's selling to will also want to buy from us, regardless of the outcome. It's the same in the UK. They got a few hiccups and there was a bit of trouble, but they got around it. Now their fish is being sold in Europe, the same as ours, yet they're not in the European Union, tariff free. Norway is selling their stuff into Europe. Anybody that catches the fish is selling it into Europe, tariff free. So, like, I don't believe that we would be worse off if we stepped out of the common fishery policy until it recovered. There are too many boats coming into Irish waters taking too much fish, but they're not Irish. And because they're taking so much fish, there's less fish from us. And that's not just because we have a share, it's because the fish themselves have gone down. They've gone down to a quarter of what they were. So there's multiple factors affecting Irish fishermen that they just can't get away from. They just can't survive. And we keep saying it, but all we get is communication from our media that says, oh, your fishermen are doing this wrong, or they're doing this wrong, or they're killing that, or they're doing this, and you're just
What
going,
do they know? What do they know? They
you see,
report
they
it.
don't
They're not
want to,
even
and they're
registered.
telling the public that the
Yeah.
fishermen, if you make out the victim to be the villain, he loses his sympathy and he loses his support. It's that simple. And I believe that's what's happening in droves. We had teachers in schools telling children, without scientific advice or evaluation, to go on innuendo and urban myths. No proof, no evidence. And they convinced those children to target fishermen and to tell them they were bad, and also then their children when they went to school. That's wrong. So to me, if a teacher did that in any other subject or anything else, if he did it in farming, he wouldn't keep his position for long, like. But that's my view.
When is
I
this?
think it's wrong, so wrong that these people who are risking their lives, and
Yeah.
most families in fishing can go back and see where a family member did not come home. I'd say most families. So there's, it's like you see with wars, Uncle Johnny or granduncle or whatever in the Somme or wherever, there's some link. Well, it's the same for our fishing communities. There is no family untouched or an in-law or somebody. There's because we keep losing people to the sea, and thankfully that has dramatically reduced over the years, but still that inherent danger is there. Now here's the rub, right? We're being told by Europe, right, that we need to get rid of our bigger boats and start looking after the small scale and promoting that instead. I was there for long enough. I have marks in my body to show that I'm lucky to be talking to you today. Genuinely, that I didn't get pulled out over the side. Just it wasn't my time on a few occasions. So you're putting people at. I have friends that I lost in the inshore sector. Um, at least two in the locality I can name straight away off the head. I know lads that swam to shore. Actually, three now is after popping into my head. So, like, this is reality for us. If you give them more fish, they can choose to go out in less harmful weather. They can reduce the risks. I was actually talking to a Norwegian company that are developing buoys with AI and tracking thing that can tell a fisherman before he leaves his home what the weather is like outside because they can govern the height and fall of the water and the swell. So like they know, well, I'm not taking a chance because it's not fit for me out there. And on that particular day I can't go to sea and might save his life. This is where we're trying to develop our industry, but I don't think there is enough money in the industry now for fellas to stay at it because it's just not viable. Like the
And that's common. That's not viable, and the fisherman is because of the laws and the dictatorship from Europe.
and the amount of fish that's been taken by others, Roisin, I'm not going. Yeah,
Stolen, and stolen,
but you
and
see,
because of invasion of
yeah, but
foreign
they won't
ships.
say it's stolen because it's gifted to them. That's
Mm.
how you can't be
Well,
accused of
we
stealing.
won't fight over the war of words.
Yeah, but you see, this is what I'm saying to you. I believe that, it should be. The war of should happen. I don't think our politicians are gifting what they should be gifting. It's not their right to give away.
No, it's
So
not.
if anybody's stealing it from you, it's your politicians. They're stealing it from the Irish
Yeah.
people and they're giving it away in your behalf. That's the problem. So at last, we have politicians that are going against that and are saying, well, hang on a second. No, so they have made noise and our Taoiseach has made noise. And you have to credit people when they are doing what you've asked them to do. So Micheál Martin has raised it. Minister Hayden has raised it. Minister Dooley has raised it. The problem is the system is geared against them, that Europe itself doesn't have a fair system. The way it's designed, without the vetoes for the smaller nations, they're being crucified and they're being bullied, which was not the nature or wasn't the intent of the European Union when it
Yeah.
started. They actually tried to avoid that. But the bigger states seem to be now is able to take away the voices of the smaller countries and rule them in a different way. And we see that with the money that's been given to other countries, and you're being told, you have to toe the line here. You see it on immigration, and if you don't do it, we're being threatened by the president, Ursula von der Leyen, and you're in breach of our
He's
policies.
not elected. He's not
Yes,
elected.
true.
Yeah, so there's huge problems in Europe. I'm still pro-European, believe it or not. I still think it's better for our country to be part of a larger group. Not
If
militarily,
it's fair to
absolutely
us and the
not.
Irish people, if it's fair to us and the Irish people, we can, it's working for us and not against us. Because right now we are just like, what's the word? We're like insurgents to the European. That's if you were calling it a war, we are like insurgents in our own country fighting for our food security within our farmers and our fishermen.
Yeah, but we are. But
Yeah,
there's
we
not
are.
enough of us. We need more. We need the same public opinion that they had in water meters to come out for these
Mm.
industries. We need people outside of the industries to stand up. And look, we have a meeting this weekend with Cynthia Numerico, and there's a lady from the PEsh committee coming over from the Basque region in Spain to listen to our plight. And even though if we get, they lose, she's still coming over to listen, and she's on the PEsh committee. We have speakers from industry, myself, E. O'Donnell, hopefully Brendan Byrne, if his health allows, to come down and we have John Nolan from the co-op to come in and speak. We have people with combined hundreds of years of experience in the industry, like, and they've gone through every type of it. And me as a fisherman, aquaculturist, lobbyist now, and been at it all my life. Hopefully, you'll have something to contribute. But the main thing is that there's an advisor coming over from Renew, from the party, the Renew party, and if they bring this back to the others and put it up to what they've heard and say, well, do you stand by this? Do you stand over the way the system is now destroying the smaller member state and their
Mm.
industry? Simple. Do you? That's the question I want to ask. Um, do Ireland have the right to have the fishing industry going forward, the seafood industry?
Yes.
That's the question. Do Europe believe they have a right? If they do, then they have to change the common fishery policy because currently it's not possible. It's that
Why?
simple. Because the others are taking so much fish. We are the bottom of the pile. So when all of it gets shoved down together, we get disappear. They're still left there. They have the cushion. They have the cushion to allow them to survive because they've multiples of our fish, Roisin. So if we're surviving on 100 ton of fish, but the Spain has 400 ton,
It's,
right?
it's nonsensical.
And yeah, but if we can survive in 100, then they can survive in 100. But
Yeah.
we can't survive in
Mm.
50. They couldn't survive in 50. So if you have a 50% cut, even though they lose away more than us, they still have a way more afterwards. So if we go from 200 and what we're just surviving on to 100 and can't survive, if they have 800, they can go to 400, no problem, and still survive, still keep going. We can't. You come to a scenario where it's no longer viable. It's just impossible to survive. There's just not enough oxygen for us all to survive. They have the bigger oxygen bottles. We're gonna
Own Irish waters,
Mm.
gifted to them by the Irish politicians
Yeah.
to overfish in our waters, and where our fishermen are then are like told to go inland and
yeah.
give up their fishing boats.
Now, the overfishing, you see, technically, they're not overfishing. They're still staying within the scientific advice that's given. We don't
Who
allow
is the
overfishing.
scientific? You see, it all comes down to
Scientific.
follow the
But
money.
yeah, but the thing
Pays
is,
for that scientific.
but I think the system is broken on that as well too. I think the system of the landing obligation, the system of the common fishery policy, the system of MSY, maximum sustainable yield, is not conducive to protecting the stocks, because if the MSY keeps dropping and they're all interlinked at different levels, if you're fishing an MSY, then the one that becomes healthy and goes up, there'll always be a reason to keep it down. So fishermen will be forced to target the stocks that are in trouble at the MSY range, but they're still fishing them. Whereas before, fishermen would go to the best opportunity. So, say a lot of, like, an example now, we see a lot of octopus coming into our waters, like, so that's a non-quota species. So, fishermen, if they could design a system, once they spend time at the octopus catching them, they're not fishing the other stocks. They've been moved over, they have been um, adjusting their fishing patterns, and they give the other fish a break and they go to what's good. The common fishery policy doesn't allow for that
It's
anymore.
not working.
Yeah, it's not working, and I keep explaining that, but I'm only saying this as a layperson. I don't have the skill set and the technology to write that out in a scientific paper like they do, that gets it
However,
across
they
the line.
have the academics of using the scientific language.
Yes.
However, fishermen know their waters. Fishermen know if there's a lack of fish. Fishermen have the skill and the common sense and the knowledge and expertise far more than academics looking at screens and writing academic papers. They're academics, they're scientists, they're not fishermen. Fishermen know if their waters are lacking in fish. Or what's wrong? The first thing, what's wrong with low in fish? It's the scientific reports, they're not Irish scientists. They're not representing the Irish people or the Irish fishermen. They're representing big corporates. And that's an issue that I'm just finding is out of all this.
Yeah, well, to a certain extent, no, you're definitely true there. But I would be hoping that the system allows for some balance in that, and we are allowed to contribute, not as much as we'd like, and not enough to change things
Well,
immediately. But they do listen over time. But and that's my job. I will be meeting with
hopism.
scientists.
I've got to the stage, I don't believe in hopism anymore. We're at the stage now where hopism in Ireland has just got everybody exasperated. And what we want is not hopism. We want realism and we want action and we want our food resources and food security, food safety and food supply back in Irish
It
control.
will take the Irish people to stand up to ask for that, because we're a population of 7 in, I don't know, hundreds of millions in Europe. And unfortunately, the way things have changed, the smaller countries do no longer have a veto. They can no longer
Mm.
call the shots. That has been removed from them. That was a big mistake, in my view, to allow it to happen. And all the smaller states should have stuck together and said, no.
Yeah.
And that's the problem now in Europe. And we've given too much power to, as you said, the unelected section. There's three sections: member states, European Parliament, Commission. We've given too much power to the Commission, but ergo the Commissioner, as in, and not the Commissioner for the Marine, the Commissioner, the one on top, the President, who seems to be ruling the roost for everybody else. And like, I don't know, is everybody else watching it like, but to me, far off a dictatorship. They're on about removing people in other parts of the world. Well,
Mm.
this woman was unelected. She was picked by a very small minority of people, and she seems to be able to ignore what she wants to ignore. And we see it in Europe, and change the debates, change the wording, get enough support behind that to do it, and in all areas. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't have a president, but I don't think they should have the final say, which seems to be the case at the moment. And
Especially someone who's unelected.
Yeah. And
well,
if you think about it as well, when the European Union was established, or the EEC at the time, was as established on the concept of solidarity. And if you look at the way our fishermen have been treated, not just currently, but over the last, say, 50 years or more, It's not a good demonstration of solidarity.
Yeah.
So I read something out today, and I'll read this to you as well. So, heading 5, Fisheries Chapter 1. Initial provisions under Article Fish.1, sovereign rights of coastal states. Exercised by the parties affirm that sovereign rights of coastal states exercised by the parties for the purpose of exploring, exploiting, conserving, and managing the living resources in their waters should be conducted pursuant to and in accordance with the principles of international law, including the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, and this was on the 10th of December 1982. Now that is
4 years ago.
United Nations European Law of the Sea, and I keep saying that that has not been followed by Europe. The example of that is Brexit. And there we should be contesting that legally as a country. We should be bringing that to the fore when we're in the presidency, like Paul said. But that's up to our politicians. But it's up to our people in the
Do you
country to
believe,
demand.
though, and sorry for interrupting you, but do you believe that Europeans respect Irish politicians and Irish people and the island of Ireland?
I do. I do, but what I don't think is that our politicians have been forceful enough to ensure that their rights are um accepted. Like we've seen it this year with the Hague preferences, like we've seen it with the Danes in the presidency, which we're taking over, ruled that the 4 large countries that objected to the Hagues was enough to stop the Hagues from being put forward. Now, because there's an anomaly in the law there that the Hagues are meant to be voted upon by the majority, then the majority can overrule the rights of the minority. It's our right under the common fishery policy, under relative stability, like I read out, under international world law, United Nations, like I read out, that's the law in the world. So they're choosing that their rights under a policy that they've written supersede those rights. So legally speaking, we need to take a case, but like, is the appetite there? And you'll hear, oh, there's other interests, there's other things to consider, there's geopolitical and everything else. That means that the Irish people have to stand up for their own people. Will they do it? That's where the rubber meets the road, in my view. And and if we don't, it's gone. And that will be the inevitable outcome because it's happening. This isn't me. You hear about climate change and everything else, and well, the evidence is there. Like we had thousands of boats, now we're down to 140. We had 8 million metric tons of living biomass fish in our waters, according to our Taoiseach, that is now reduced to 2 million metric biotons. That can't be sustained. That's not sustainable. I ascertain that because we're taking the smallest share of that, we're doing the least amount of damage. Because we've lost so many boats, we've already taken the pain. Where there were once was 400, now there's 140. So we've lost 63% of our number. We've made the sacrifices to protect these stocks in our own waters, and it's not enough.
Well, we can't protect the fishermen. No matter from what I'm listening to you, Patrick, no matter what the Irish fishermen do to protect our stock, if it's been gifted to international big trawlers to come in and, in my opinion, steal our fish without no moral compass, then no matter what the Irish fishermen do or the Irish do, will never ever be good enough. And I don't see how Ireland should get the blame of the scientific reports to
Yeah, well, just
say that
in
there's
in
not
our
enough fish.
in our history, you're repeating history. Like we've been a country that has been, invaded many, many times, taken over, or people enslaved and taken away as slaves and sent around the world as slaves, our property taken off us. We were starved. We were, genocide. This is nothing new, and it's not
And
that
been
long in our
constantly
history.
used.
So what I would be saying is, Roisin, despite the pessimistic and doom and gloom, I think we can turn it around. I think it's
And
in
let's
our
do this.
I think it's our obligation.
Yes.
As you said, Michael Collins and more have died for us. They gave us a shot. We failed. We dropped the ball, but we can pick it up again. I believe we
Let's do
can.
that.
And I hope that, as you said, Paul said, our presidency is the opportunity to do so. But we need people to decide or put pressure on the politicians. Here you go. It's a very easy win. Nobody can dispute that Ireland has been badly treated under the common fishery policy. There's the man or woman anywhere in the world could argue to that fact. Then it's up to our politicians to go out and say, well, we need it changed. We need you to reverse what's happening to our fishermen. We need to give the ground time to recover, but we can't be the sacrificial lamb in the meantime. So everybody else has to pull back. You'll have to suffer for a change. And unfortunately, because the fish stocks have dropped low, and until they recover, we can't allow what's happening to continue because we will not survive. We
And
need.
in doing that, you will make our fishermen great again and our coastal communities great again.
But you'll make Europe great again. Because if you rebuild the stocks, you can then start again and bring those countries in to fish in a very short number of years to allow them back in again. But the ground is not getting a rest. The
No,
fish aren't being
it's
given
not
a
going to
break.
get a rest if all these countries are coming
Yeah.
in and
So
take
you could
the
you
large amount and fish. Irish, as you said, the Irish fishermen are only allowed this much. The foreign ships are coming in, and when the percentages go down, the Irish fishermen get worse. They only come down. They can sustain that. That should be opposite. Our Irish fishermen should have the highest quotas, and the foreign ships and fishermen should have the lowest
I
quotas.
can guarantee you if we had the larger quotas, there'd be no problem with overfishing or fishing down the
No,
stocks.
no,
I
no.
guarantee you that.
And the
That would
scientific
be assured because there's no way the others would take more because they'd be the first ones to go. You've hit the nail on the head there, Roisin. If things could turn around that way, yes, that would be ideal. Will it happen? Time will tell.
No, we
All
have
of
to
us
make it. It
do.
has to be made to happen because this is about this is sovereignty of our Irish waters and
Yeah.
our coastal communities. And I know Micheál Martin does. He made a comment about that, and sovereignty is now a far right word, but no, it's not a far right word. It is a common sense word. We need to have sovereignty over our coastal waters and our agriculture and our food supply and food source and food safety and food. We'll end it there. Patrick Murphy, thank you so much for coming on the Irish Political Roundup.
And thank you both of you again for giving your time selflessly on a Sunday. For me, I would talk to anybody about the fishing industry anytime. My wife will probably tell you I speak about it in my sleep now at this stage. But I wish to thank both of you. You've been very good servants to us in the industry. And Cynthia appreciated the talk as well the last time. And I hope others will take the opportunity and that you'll get bigger and more people will start to watch this and that they'll understand that this is important.
Patrick Murphy, CEO of South and West Production Organization. Thank you so much indeed.
Thanks, lads.